Shut the blinds all the way tight. My name is Master Sergeant Marcus Anthony. I was in the Army. I eventually worked for a private defense contractor, and I eventually helped the Bush family orchestrate 9/11. Hey guys, this is Cal Andrews, documentarian. Now don't judge me too harshly on my appearance, because I may go to the gym later. Lord knows I need it. So later today we have an interesting guy coming by. He says he knows a little bit about 9/11 that we'd all be interested in. I think he contacted me actually because I guess he knew that I was interested in the Bush administration and everything that they'd gotten away with over the years. And I guess that's why he contacted me. He said he got a lot to get off his chest. He knows some stuff about 9/11 that we don't know. Sounds interesting, kind of spooky. I was looking into his background, and basically he says that 9/11 was an inside job, that he helped plan it for the Bush administration. I mean, it all sounds a little kooky, a little crazy, but even if he is lying, you know, I have to look at it as like, is he crazy? Is he nuts? And even if he is lying, like, why is he lying? You know, like, what would he have to gain by making this up? And so, really, the documentary is going to be kind of a search for the truth. I don't even like that there's a window right there, but I guess there's no way around it. You have to listen close. You have to lean in. There's not going to be any second takes. There's not going to be any sound dubs. You might as well not even fuck around with the lighting. You're going to get one shot at this. We're going to film this all tonight, and then you're never going to see me again. Nobody might see me again. Now, to understand 9/11, we have to go all the way back to World War I, 100 years ago, basically, to look at the great-grandfather of George W. Bush, Samuel Bush, really the beginnings of the Bush family fortune. He sold armaments during World War I, and he made a bundle. So you're already seeing a family that associates war with profit and power and family prestige. Now, it's important to understand that the Bushes are not purely money-driven. They do derive personal benefit from these things, but they also have a weird justification for what they're doing. They really believe that it's what's best for America, which is where the idea came for Prescott Bush to basically launder Nazi money into America through the UBS Bank. Samuel Bush made money off World War I. Prescott Bush definitely made money off World War II. And this is why FDR was after the Bush family. It's why they hate him. The Bush family is driven by a fanatical hatred of communism. They think that's the greatest threat to America, as most rich people do. But Prescott Bush looked at America and didn't see something that really was the world power it should be, which is why he helped Adolf Hitler. Now, it can't be proven, and there's no direct connection between him and Hitler, but he did want Hitler to take Germany, and he did want Hitler to basically start invading European rivals. It helped a twofold purpose. The first was to help neuter the communists that were spreading throughout Russia and may have spread through Europe. And the second is because he wanted World War II to happen. It can be argued that a big part of the reason America is the country it is today is because of World War II. It knocked out all of our major rivals in Europe, Asia. All the other industrialized nations had to spend decades rebuilding the infrastructure that was bombed out. And what was the only game in town? The United States. We helped rebuild these countries. It was American cranes, American manufacturing, American steel. All of the industries of the United States were helping rebuild this. So this is how we became the world power we are today. So Bush didn't really think that he was just helping himself when he was helping the Nazis rise to power. He did have a justification for it, but in his mind, FDR was in the way. And that's where you get the business plot. And Smedley Butler, an American general that they had used over and over again to destabilize regions in Central America, the Caribbean, the Banana Wars. Anytime an American company needed an unfriendly government out of the way in a third world country, they called in Smedley Butler and his private army to do it. Bush and some other industrialists, like the head of the DuPont family, approached him about getting rid of FDR. They thought he was a communist. They thought he was after everything that they owned. They wanted a fascist takeover of America, a coup. And the only reason it didn't happen was because Smedley Butler went to Congress. So you can see the foundations of the Bush family doctrine, that communism cannot be allowed to spread, that any enemy of their family is an enemy of the United States, that they'll use any means necessary to get what they want. And that's why Prescott Bush was conspicuously inside Dallas the day Kennedy was shot in '63. Now you might think that this is all paranoia. Prescott Bush being behind the Kennedy assassination, trying to overthrow FDR, staging a fascist coup against America, trying to help Hitler's rise to power. How can one man be behind all this? But look at his son, George H.W. Bush. He was in the right place at the right time, the power broker behind the scenes of every major decision that happened throughout his lifetime. He was the director of the Republican Party. He was the director of the CIA. He was the ambassador to China when they were trying to open up China. Everywhere you look is the Bushes in power. Then when he became the vice president, he was essentially the de facto president for 8 years. George H.W. Bush was behind every major decision, like funding the drug lords, helping smuggle in cocaine into America to make crack into the inner cities so they could get more money to the rebels fighting the communists. He helped create the drug lords in South America and the Caribbean and Central America. He helped create the Taliban in Russia. He wanted to turn Afghanistan into Russia's version of Vietnam. He wanted to bleed them dry. People think Reagan ended the Cold War. The Taliban ended the Cold War by draining Russia's military and financial resources. He wanted to tie the communists down in as many places as he could, and it didn't matter if it was Pablo Escobar, Manuel Noriega, the Taliban, or even the beginnings of Al-Qaeda. He would use any tool he could to do it. The cocaine for guns scandal, the Iran-Contra affair, and of course, the Bushes knew the most powerful and well-connected Saudi there was, Osama bin Laden. Now, of course, we also have an interview set up tomorrow. We're going to film the 9/11 guy today, but tomorrow we're going to film somebody, and he won't even admit that the guy worked at this defense contractor that he works for now. So it's all very shadowy and mysterious, but the man that we're interviewing, he did take the ASVAB test in high school. He said he scored so high that the military recruited him straight on, and then they saw that he had some sociopathic tendencies or some moral flexibility in the test that made him even more desirable for these type of assignments. So we've got his employment contract for these defense contractors. So the fact that they're denying he even worked there, I don't know, maybe they're just trying to save face, maybe it's an embarrassment thing, but there are records of him being in some of these countries. His passport checks out some of the things we've looked at. He's a very mysterious guy. He doesn't want any windows. He barely wants me to be there when he's filming. He'd like my camera just to be there. So, I don't know. Who am I? What's my backstory? I don't think we should even get into that. It's not important, and it's a rabbit hole. It's going to take you through the wrong conclusions. But if you think it's really that important, I was born in the Southeast, a small town in Mississippi that nobody's ever heard of. All I really wanted to do was join the military and get away from my dad, and then my stepdad, and then eventually my other stepdad. And I didn't really have a use for male authority figures until my commanding officer. When I got out of the military, I was offered a job for a private defense contractor. And then we went on different missions that I can't really talk about. They're not really important, but let's say they were secretive. And let's say they were dangerous. And let's say they kept getting more dangerous and more secretive until I didn't really care what I was doing, as long as I was doing it with the Brotherhood, the guys I'd been with my whole tours and really taken me in. And then President Bush was elected. You know, driving through Los Angeles, I mean, I have to kind of look at myself as a little sheltered. I mean, I never was in the military. I don't know that many people that are. And I have to think about my security and what I'm willing to give up and what that takes to really be secure. And if it takes a guy like this who might be an outright psychopath to defend me. So when old Bush came in as the 43rd president of the United States, it was a shock to everybody. I mean, this is a guy who fucked up everything he ever did. He bought a baseball team in Texas. They lost. He couldn't find oil in Texas. He had a savings and loan scandal that almost wrecked the entire economy. George H.W. Bush and the Reagan administration had to bail them out. If that had been you or me that did that with the S&L scandal, we'd still be in jail. So Neil Bush, who disappeared, nobody ever fucking saw Neil Bush again, took all the blame for it, and George W. ran for president, and he won. And this was a guy that nobody even thought should have been governor of Texas. He becomes president under a cloud of suspicion. Nobody thinks he really should have been. Bush versus Gore. Gore gets the popular vote. Nobody really thinks that George W. Bush didn't steal it, that Jeb Bush didn't steal Florida for him. And he's looking at how can he solidify his presidency. And he noticed that false flag attacks typically help people in power. Vladimir Putin was not going to succeed Boris Yeltsin until they had false flag attacks that they blamed on Chechen rebels. Hitler had false flag attacks. That's how he used to basically get rid of any opposition. The only other thing he really could have done would be to get shot. And George W. Bush, who was a draft dodger who didn't go to Vietnam, Daddy got him out of that. He went to the Air National Guard in Alabama, hid out in Alabama during the Vietnam War. Needless to say, he was not going to get shot. So it was going to have to be a false flag attack of some kind of terrorist attack that could get everybody behind him. Okay, this is the house of the former employee of a defense contractor that agreed to talk to us. Nobody currently working there even agreed to speak to us, but what do you think? Not bad, huh? A little bit nicer than where Marcus lives, wherever that's been. Thank you for meeting with me. Ordinarily, propaganda film would just interview the conspiracy theorist and never give the other side a chance to tell you exactly how crazy that person is. Sorry about the decor. We had to meet in my son's room. Has the best light in the house. Do you have kids? Was Osama bin Laden a CIA asset? I'm talking about the people that don't have an acronym. Okay, talking beyond the CIA. The people the CIA doesn't even know about, probably. That's who Osama bin Laden was with. But you're skipping ahead, and we'll get to that. Because it's important to understand the Bush family's ties to Saudi Arabia. Now, they had a relationship with Saudi Arabia going way back. Similar interests, aligned. Now, I can only imagine what he told you. Probably a lot of crazy stuff. What did he tell you, exactly? I think the Bush family understood that if they could get ties to Saudi Arabia, they could get hooks into every major terrorist group on earth. Now, how does Saudi Arabia have anything to do with all the jihadist groups on earth? They use the pilgrimages to Mecca. Different representatives can go, and Saudi Arabia can manipulate everything without ever leaving their home country. They can use it to influence it. They've also got more money and resources that they can give to these groups than any of the local governments can. And they need these groups to help keep Shia countries in check. They also spread radical clerics throughout the globe, ones that they train in their mosque and then spread, so that Sunniism can take control and they don't have to be as worried about Iran and the Shia governments. They started to become afraid when you started to see different terrorist attacks target them and begin to start trying to influence change within Saudi Arabia and get rid of their royal family and the oil pipelines. The Bush family and the Saudi family, they believe they can keep a tight rein on the oil prices. And different things like Libya sponsoring Carlos the Jackal to assassinate the Saudi oil minister during the OPEC crises. These all made Saudi afraid that their position was going to fall if they didn't do something and they didn't have some type of controls on it. And it's not an entirely unreasonable fear. People have been trying to knock them out of OPEC for a long time. They have been trying to get rid of their influence in the oil markets for a long time. Iran's growing influence scared both Saudi Arabia and the United States. Hezbollah ran America out of Beirut and Lebanon in the 1980s. Iran used Hezbollah as their puppet. They were beginning to use Palestine as their puppet. Israel, Saudi Arabia, the governments in Jordan, the Christian government in Lebanon at that time, all felt threatened by this growing Shia terrorist violence. U.S. and Saudi Arabia used Iraq and Saddam Hussein to stop Iran and the revolution from spreading too far during the Iraq-Iran war. But then they became afraid of Saddam when he decided that he didn't like doing their bidding with no money. So he decided to invade Kuwait and take over their oil fields. And that threatened Saudi Arabia. They were afraid if he came after the oil in Kuwait, he might come after the oil there. And so the whole thing felt like a proxy war. You had the Russians backing the Shia governments of Iran, Hezbollah, Palestine, on and on. So they had their groups. They were usually Shia groups. And America had their groups, Sunnis and the religious fundamentalists, and America on one side, and the secularists and the Shias and the communists, Russia on the other side. And both America and Saudi Arabia found out that a world you can't rule is a world that will hurt you. If you can't control it, you can't contain the chaos. Okay, do you guys see that car? Okay. Are there divisions between the Bushes and Cheney? Fuck no. There are only divisions when they need to humanize one of the Bushes during an election. And they can make Cheney look like the boogeyman who was always behind the evil, and if they just could have got rid of him, everything would have been okay. The Bushes were really humanitarians deep down, and it was that evil Dick Cheney that led them astray. They all come back basically to the same thing. Cheney's more Old Testament government, torture, waterboarding, massive government surveillance, homeland security. But George H.W. Bush kind of wants the same things, but he doesn't want to get his hands dirty. But Bush Sr. is a little bit more in the MacArthur doctrine. He truly believes that when we rebuilt Japan and rebuilt Germany and rebuilt these countries, that we made them better and stronger. And we could have done the same to Afghanistan and Iraq, but they wouldn't let us. In fact, it's kind of ironic that the terrorists really could have hurt us worse if they had become the next Germany or Japan and got their shit together. And that way they could have stolen our jobs and competed against us in an economy. But no, they still think they can blow their way out of the problem, which they kind of like, because the whole Iraq war was about oil scarcity. People kept saying that it was, oh, we were stealing the oil, we were going to get the oil, and why don't we have $1 a gas? It was never about getting oil cheap. It was about getting oil higher and higher and higher, as high as it could go. It was $4 a gallon at the height of the Bush administration. Because when we had the war in Iraq, that led to scarcity. Iraq didn't produce enough oil. They didn't get that oil into the economy. So you had the 5th largest oil producer in the world being taken basically out of the global economy. It drove up scarcity. It was record profits for W and his oil buddies. It was record profits for Halliburton, who got all the contracts to rebuild Iraq. $400 for a load of laundry, things like that. It was a windfall fortune for everybody. But you're probably wondering, what was my role in all this? Okay, do you guys see that car? Okay, the black Lexus in front of me, it keeps following me. It's been following me for hours, okay? And then when I slowed down, it pulled in front of me. But I guarantee you, if I begin to turn, it's going to follow me down another street. I don't know why this is happening, but I keep noticing the same 2 or 3 cars following me everywhere I go. I don't like being higher than the ground floor. That's why I like it when windows are closed. I don't like looking out tall buildings. I don't ever like being in towers. Just coming into the complex, when I saw your tower, I almost didn't come in. Can't look at an apartment tower or any office building anymore without thinking about how fragile it looks. How it wouldn't be anything to just knock it down. I've seen the same 2 or 3 men all day long. One will come and pretend to walk his dog, and the next will come and talk on the cell phone, but I've seen them here almost the entire day. I've never seen them before this week until after the interview. Eventually, I took a job with a defense contractor based out of Huntsville, Alabama. I didn't know it at the time, but it was a subsidiary of Halliburton. But at the time, Halliburton meant nothing to me. Bush had just taken office, but already they were talking about a super secret mission that they wanted me to help them with. flew with my boss to meet some Saudi diplomats in Miami. Exclusive beach resort, nothing out of the ordinary. Wealthy Arab fucks come in there all the time. Rolls Royces and luxury clothes. You got to see some of the women, they got Victoria's Secret on under their burqas. I mean, some really high dollar shit, you know, 100 grand worth of jewelry under there. But didn't think anything about it. But then he started talking to them one-on-one. And they slip in and out of different languages. Some of it's Arabic, which I didn't know my boss spoke. It's a white guy, Southern. I didn't know he spoke Arabic. Spoke a little bit. Some of it was German. A lot of it was English. And I remember he made assurances to the Saudi diplomats that Iran would be after Iraq if they could get done what they needed to do. No matter how long it took to invade Iran, the war in Iraq would rage long enough that their oil would be worth a fortune. Promised that it would spike oil prices where they needed to be so that they could have enough cash for generations. I thought that was weird, but I guess I'd always kind of thought that we would go to war with Iraq. I mean, Bush seemed to have a hard-on about it. There'd been a lot of talk about it, but the stuff about Iraq and Iran, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't really care what my boss was doing because I just loved working for that company so much. Then we flew to Turkey, and they wanted me to go meet a Saudi agent by myself. So we snuck me across the border from Turkey into Iraq. Keep in mind, this was still Saddam's Iraq. The war had not started. Me and the Saudi man, the agent, I never got a name, but we spent days together. I never thought to ask for one, and he never volunteered one. We met a Iraqi general, a high up in the Iraqi military. One of the eventual founders of ISIS and the Iraqi insurgency, that apparently was not that happy with Saddam and wanted to help us. He says that he'll tell the Saudi man that Iraq had WMDs. He said Iraq does have WMDs, but then he kind of winked. And this was going to be the basis for why they had to invade. I thought that was pretty clever at the time. Then we go into a secret tunnel that leads to a vault. It's got all these guns, just rows of assault weapons, anti-tank guns, missiles, rocket launchers, high-dollar weapons. This was one of the networks set up for the Iraq-Iran war, in case Iran influenced the majority Shia population of Iraq to rise up and take over it. So they set up this vast insurgent network inside of Iraq, all these weapons caches and tunnels. Now, of course, this would be used against American troops and military when the Iraq War happened. Maybe they'd forgotten by the time the Iraq War rolled around, or maybe they just didn't care. It sure didn't seem like Bush cared much about the Iraqi insurgency when he fired the entire Iraqi military and gave them the keys to all the weapons that they'd been storing all the years and told them that they weren't going to have a paycheck anymore. Kind of seemed like he wanted it to happen. After that happened, we went into Afghanistan. No, I can't give you the dates that he worked for our company because we never employed him. He was never hired. He certainly never went on any trips to Saudi Arabia or Turkey, or even if he did, it certainly wasn't on our behalf. So I think that pretty much clears it up in terms of our involvement with this individual. You say you have evidence. Once we were there, we went deep into this compound. And me and the agent met a trusted courier and bodyguard of Osama bin Laden. And we talked to him for a long time. And then finally, we met bin Laden himself. Now, he had been an agent for the Saudis since the Soviet War. The Saudi government and bin Laden hate each other. Well, the Middle East is complicated. Now, you said you had kids. So let me ask you exactly what you would do to keep them safe. The streets you drive down safe, the mall you go to safe, the movie theaters. Because that's the war that we're facing every day. The airplane you're in could blow up. The car you're in may blow up. You could fall and die in the shower. It's not a safe world, but I think we're trying to make it safer. I think you and your family should really appreciate the work we're doing, despite what some individual tells you to feel. Someone in American intelligence and Saudi intelligence thought that Sunni terrorist networks would be a good answer to the Shia terrorist networks that Russia was putting all over the globe. And bin Laden had the money and the connections to make that happen. Knew exactly how to get his people into America because his family had business dealings all over there. You might remember after 9/11 happened and Bush sent all of bin Laden's family out of the country. So it wasn't that hard for him to get people in. And Saudi diplomats would help them once they were in, would tell them what to do, which was in the 27 pages that they desperately don't want you to see. That's why he demoted anyone like Richard Clarke, who played up Al-Qaeda as a threat because he was tired of hearing about them before the attack happened. It didn't lift a finger to stop these attacks before they happened. Then even when the military was in Afghanistan, he lets bin Laden's old Soviet war buddies be the ones to lead the hunt for him. He told the Marines to stand down in the mountains of Tora Bora, and a couple of Afghan warlords let bin Laden slip away through the mountains into his stronghold of Pakistan, and then he refused to even look for bin Laden in Pakistan. And after 9/11, Bush got everything he wanted. The war on terror, homeland security, Guantanamo Bay interrogations, Gitmo Bay, waterboarding, mass surveillance. Oil and contractor prices went up through the roof. It all worked. It all happened just like he thought it would. Just trying to think about everything we talked about and process it because, you know, at the end when he was talking about like the reason that the truther movement never got anywhere is because even the people that did blow up the towers, they planted that story about there being artificial explosives to try to discredit everything. And then at the end, when I was talking to him after we filmed, he said that in a week he'd be dead from a heart attack. And I said, "Do you have any heart trouble?" And he said, "No." It was like, it had that weird smile, and then, you know, the other fucking guy, I mean, what was that about my family? It was like he was threatening me or threatening people that had kids, and I just don't know if spending so much time with Marcus has made me as crazy as he is, or maybe he's not that crazy. When 9/11 happened, how did it make me feel? When it first happened, I didn't really give a shit. Yeah, it was bad, but you know, New York is a different world than Mississippi. And my whole life I'd spent in Mississippi, and the best times were Fort Benning, Georgia, when I was going through basic training. And after that, I lived in Columbus a little bit. Columbus is kind of like Atlanta if you take all the money out of it and leave all the problems. And being in Georgia, thinking about General Sherman burning it to the ground, and then when he retired to New York, I don't know, it just felt like they never gave a shit about any of our problems, and maybe they had it coming a little bit. But then I realized that's probably exactly what some of the Arab world thought. And then I started seeing that footage. Of the buildings coming down and the people running around trying to get out of it. And all that smoke and just smothering out the sun. And it looked like darkness in the middle of the daytime. The sun set at noon. And all I could think was those old paintings you used to see of hell. I don't even know if there is a hell. If there is, I'm probably going to go there. But those old paintings of limbs and monsters, ashes, all tangled up together in a big ball. And when they'd show that footage of all the debris smothering out people and people walking around with smoke popping off their shoulders and coal everywhere, that's exactly what it looked like, was just pure hell brought to life. And I guess a little bit of me thought that was kind of powerful, that I could make all that happen. But then I was just doing what people told me to do. So how powerful is that really? And a lot of people got exactly what they wanted, and it didn't seem to matter that 3,000 people died like it was fucking nothing, you know? And even though I didn't care the first year, it started to come 2 years and 3 years and 10 years, and now it's been 15, and I just fucking... I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. Let me just close this fucking window here. I've picked up Marcus's window habit. But yeah, he died. Man with no heart trouble. Died of a heart attack, just like he said he was going to. And I don't know what the fuck's going on between him and that contractor guy who threatened me when I said Marcus had evidence. And I don't know. What the fuck was that? I mean, can you imagine those stupid New York fucks just walking their dog or some, getting lattes or some faggoty shit out there and just living their lives and just like nothing can touch them, and then just everything touches them all at one time, and it all just comes at once. And they thought they had pretty good lives, maybe 100 grand lives, all those powerful bankers living in the same place, working in the same place, sleeping in the same place, being isolated, like nothing can touch them, and then it does. For all that power to just come and people could conjure it up and all that power could just happen. For people to say, why come forward and why talk about it? Why reveal everything now that it's too late and nothing can happen, nothing can come of it? Why come forward? Because we got away with it. Let's go see what that was. Who opened the window?